All right guys, today we are doing something very interesting that I'm super excited about. We're putting a 2-inch lift on the Subaru Baja. Now this is gonna be a spacer lift. I have springs and stuff coming that's gonna add a little bit, but for now we're just gonna put on the spacer lift. And I really wanna show you guys how to put it on and what you need to put it on, because over the past few days I've been watching videos, I've been going to forums, trying to find somebody who's created either a video or a really good explanation of how to put this lift on. So last night I sat down, spent some time and tried to figure out what pieces go where, which I kind of already knew, but I was just making sure I had all the right bolts and stuff like that, and I had to run out and get some bolts, which was not the company's fault, that was my fault, because you know, when you're working on an old Subaru, you're gonna have rusted bolts that break. So that's that. So the first thing I'm gonna show you guys is what comes with the kit and what you need. And honestly, you really don't need much than a shop with basic tools. It's really not that hard, it's just time consuming. So I wanna get into that right now. So the company that I chose to go with the spacer lift was Anderson Design and Fabrication, or ADF for short. And from what I've seen on YouTube and the forums, is they make really good quality stuff, and I'm excited to try that out and put that to the test and see if it works, and I think it will. It looks pretty solid and it feels pretty solid. And the specific kit that I got was the Subaru Baja 2-inch lift with a multi-link spacers. So basically what that does is it puts spacers on the subframe, so it's not putting stress on it, not putting stress on differential or anything like that. It kind of lowers everything down. And then the front obviously is just a 2-inch block for the strut. So I'm gonna kind of go over what each component is and what it does. So obviously, starting with the front, you have the spacers, and that's literally all it is. It's a spacer, and it comes with, it says here, top nut hardware. And that's going to be your hardware for the front and also the rear, just for the top to go into the body. So what we have next is the trailing arm spacers, and these are the spacers that go on the trailing arm, which is like the furthest most point on the rear subframe. So you're going to have 4 blocks. You're going to have 2 with 1 hole and 2 other ones with 2 holes, and you're going to see where those go later. It's pretty easy to figure out. It also has hardware included. All the hardware for everything actually is included. The only things you need from your original Subaru is the actual nuts that go from the struts to the body, and those aren't usually a problem with rust or anything. So all the other issues I had down here with braking stuff, those bolts I most likely do not need, and I'm gonna see if I did my math correctly last night. Everything is accounted for besides obviously the nuts for the struts. Then you also have those 2 little support arms that go to the cross member from the subframe, so you have little blocks for those, and again, hardware is included. Now this part confused me at first because I looked at these 4 blocks and I was like, that is not 2 inches. But the reason is, and I'll show you later, these are actually the main connection points to the subframe, but you actually have to take out a block, which I'll show you later. It's probably confusing now, but you have to take something out, which is super easy, and put these in. So this accounts for that space plus the 2 inches. So that's why these are bigger. Don't be confused. And the last thing, which is again is super simple, these spacers for the struts. And these are also more than 2 inches. These are 2 3/8. On their website, you can choose to do like a leveling correction or whatever. But I also chose it because I'm gonna have a lot of weight in the back eventually with the plans I have. So it might look weird to begin with. It might look a little high, but that's eventually gonna level out. So yeah, that's why these are taller. So the first thing I want to go over today is the rear, and that is because as you can see, it is already down, as I've been spending the past few weeks trying to fix rust down there, and there's some big rust issues that I'm still trying to fix. But that's why it's already down, but I'm still going to show you what you need to do to take it down. I'm not going to retake it down, but I'll show you what points you need to hit and where you need to jack and stuff like that to get it down. So the first thing to do is with the struts. So obviously, if you have a Baja, open the back door. You have to, now excuse the mess in here. I've been tearing out the interior, so that's why there's all this stuff in the back. So what you need to do is lift the bottom seat up and actually take the top seat off, which actually isn't that complicated. There's like 2 hinges with bolts on either side. If I remember correctly, that was like probably 3 weeks ago I took that off. But I think that is what you need to do. Pretty confident in that. So I don't know if you can see it there, what I'm focused on. There's just 2 nuts right there that you need to take off. It's super simple and it just pops right out. And obviously you need to get the arm down at the bottom at the rotor, which that's pretty easy too. It's just 1 single bolt. All right, so what you need to do after that is jack it up. So you take some pressure off the differential. you need to get this bolt out of here. Now that's obviously going to be all the way up here where that hole is, but then you also get this one, same thing, right up above. And also, side note, you don't have to take out this piece right here that goes to the rotor, which is just that piece. There was just some welding that had to be done and some stuff back there, so that's why that's out. But you also have 4 bolts here. You have 1 here. You have 1 here. And then there's 2, which I don't know if you'll be able to see, but up there, right in there. Those 2 are specifically really a pain. And the last thing before I forget, there's these 2 holes, some there and 2 there. And those are your support arms that I've taken out probably 3 weeks ago, but you want to get those out, and it's going to be really easy. It's honestly just those 4 bolts because the bottom of the arm is already going to be coming out once you take that out. All right. So your struts are off and you're ready to put the spacers in. So this part is really simple. All you need to do, grab your strut, and for these, it does not matter which one goes where. They're both equal. So slide that on. And these are the original nuts, so put these back on. Cool, so now those are done. And the next thing, you want to grab your little ADF spacers, and they look bigger than 2 inches. Those are the ones I was talking about. I'll be right back and grab those. So now that you have the struts ready to go, the first thing you want to do while you have this thing down is these things right here, these little pucks. Take these out. You don't need those because that will actually not work. So yeah, take these pucks out, and let's get the strut over here. All right, so this part can be a little tricky if you're by yourself because you have to put this up in here and make it stay while you tighten it down. So what you're gonna need to install this is take your top nut hardware bag, and it's gonna be the 4 M10 flange nuts that you're gonna use. Now, ironically, I don't have them. They sent them, but I used them because I had to weld a piece in and I need to weld nuts in. So that's what I used. So I ran out this morning and grabbed something else. But yeah, use those. So then obviously put these in. I'm not going to show you both sides for everything because it's the same, especially in the rear. It's literally the same thing on both sides. So I'm just going to show you one side for most of the stuff. All right, so once the top of your struts are installed, you want to take your multi-link spacers, and that's these things, and your #1 hardware bag. And this is basically the hardware that's gonna go in the top of all these spacers. There's 4 spacers, 4 bolts, pretty simple. So put the lock nut in, and that's gonna go right here. So I have my torque wrench set to 106.9 or 107. Basically put them on this mounting point, and then there's another mounting point back here, which I'll show you. And you might have to put a smaller wrench in first. So I noticed something a little odd. The frontmost multi-link spacer, the bolt that goes up into the frame, for some reason these bolts must be different thread pitch, or maybe it's just dirty, but it's just a coincidence that both of them on either side, the frontmost multi-link spacer, it just wouldn't thread correctly. So what I did here is I put 3 little slices in it to either rethread it or clean out what's in there. I did this on the other side and it works. I'm hoping this side works as well. I'm not sure if that's a common issue on all Bajas or if that's just my Baja, but it was just a little weird. So it's something that may help you out if it's not threading correctly. It's usually the bolt. All right, so now you got those all tightened down, torqued down, whatever. And the next thing you have to do is take your #2 hardware bag, and this is gonna be for the bottom end. So obviously you're gonna attach the subframe to this. And the thing with that is that you can't forget is the support arms, they go under this. Well, one obviously for each side. The longer support arm, which I'll show you in a second, goes under this subframe mount and it gets attached with this thing. So you can't forget to put that in, or else it's gonna be a pain because you have to take it all out in order to put that support arm in. So what I'm gonna do right now is jack this thing up a little bit, get these bolts in and start with the front ones. It says start with both front ones, so I'm gonna do both front ones and then do the back ones. All right, hold up. This is me from the future. So I'm actually almost done with this lift, as you'll see later in the video. But I ran into an issue that I forgot about because it's been probably, I don't know, 3 weeks since I've taken this thing apart, so I kind of forgot some stuff. One thing, this arm, this goes from your trailing arm to your multi-link spacers. And it's been about 3 weeks since I've taken this thing apart, and I was almost done. I saw this thing lay on the ground and realized I need to put this in. This piece here needs to go in the bottom of the multi-link spacer, and this piece is going to be in the trailing arm. It probably already is in your case. In my case, I took it off a long time ago. So, that being said, don't forget this piece before you put in your multi-link spacers, because it's going to be a pain to take this off. So, yeah. Alright, so you have the cross member attached. This part's going to be a little bit tricky, I assume. I haven't done this yet. But we're starting with the front multi-link spacer. You're going to need 2 washers, a lock nut, and a nut. Now I ran into a weird dilemma, but again, I'm not sure if it's just my Baja, because I know there's work done to this rear end like a few times before I owned it, but there was this weird little plate, maybe about 1/2 inch on top of this, and with the 2-inch block on it, the bolts would barely fit through. So I had to cut those off, and those are cut off now and it works fine. So I'm not sure if that's a normal Baja thing, but if that's an issue, you will have to cut that off. But in pictures, I don't really see that, so I think it's just my Baja. The right side has a longer support arm than the left side because of fuel lines and stuff like that. So you want to get those on. And I don't think there's any particular way you have to put these on. Now obviously, this side, you have to put on the bottom of the subframe. But the way I'm doing it, because this is a new cross member I just put in, I'm not sure how well it's going to fit. So I'm going to put this in first. That way if I have to twist it a little bit, I can. And this thing's not locking me in. So that's why I'm doing this first. You can do it whatever way you want. So. Alright, so if you made it this far in the video without breaking bolts, screaming, or anything like that, congratulations. This is the final step to the rear, and this part can also be frustrating. So I just did the other side to test it out because I want to make sure there was some stuff that wasn't seaming right. But it all works out in the end. Basically, you got the 1 block, single hole. That's going to go right here like we talked about. Double hole. You probably already know where that goes, right back here. But the frustrating part comes with lining it up because, as you can see, it's sagging. Even though everything else is attached, this is still sagging. So what I had to do on the other side is put a jack under it, jack it up, and also put porta powers to push the arms certain ways. It was kind of a mess. But hopefully we don't have to do that with this one. So we're gonna find out. All right guys, it's day 2. New change of clothes, I got some sleep. I was up pretty late getting that in, and it was probably about 13 to 14 hours total. Now don't expect that to be your time on it. It should be way less than that, but I had a whole bunch of issues down there to deal with before I put it in, as far as rusted out bolts and stuff like that I had to get rid of. So that's all taken care of. The back end's done as you saw, and hopefully it all made sense, and if it didn't, comment down below and I can try to help you out with what I can. So today we're obviously doing the front part of the lift, and this is not gonna be that hard. It's literally a 2-inch spacer and that's it. We don't have to drop a subframe like we did in the back, and we don't have to do any of that. There's just a few stuff we have to disconnect and support, and then we can put that little spacer in and we're done. So as you can see, I have it up, I got the wheels off, and I'm gonna show you some stuff that you have to disconnect in order to start the lift. But other than that, it should be pretty simple, I'm hoping. As you can see guys, I'm just taking these 12mm bolts out of the top. Not that hard. There's a bunch of stuff we gotta do down there, but I'm just gonna do this first, and then we can start down there. Obviously there's other stuff supporting the strut, so it's not really that complicated. So the next step is take off your ABS line, and that's pretty simple. There's one bolt here, and there's 2 up here, which you don't have to take out, but I am, just in case I don't have enough travel to put this lift in. All right, so now you want to take your 14 and get the sway link off of here. And I'm just gonna pop these loose real quick and then tighten them right back up, just so I don't affect the camber. And then I'm gonna clean all this PB blaster off and actually spray paint on it. And if you don't wanna do that, you can obviously just use a little marker or something. All right, so the final step before this thing goes back on is obviously to put your spacer on. And for that, you're gonna use your original nuts that you used to take the spacer off with. And then you're gonna slap this thing on. So this next part is probably the hardest part, especially if you're working by yourself, is trying to get this thing up in there, because again, you have to get this thing to travel 2 more inches lower in order to get your strut on. So you're kind of dealing with a lot of stuff. And the one thing to note, which then I'll show you up top, is you have to be able to read ADF from standing in the front looking in the engine bay. And also right hand side is for passenger side, obviously. So make sure that if you're putting these on, that you know your rights and lefts on cars. So yeah, let's get this thing up in here. You can see it says ADF right there, and that is the passenger one. And according to the directions, it says to go to, I believe it says 14 foot-pounds of torque. I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, so I'm just going as tight as I can, but not like overdoing it. I'm just kind of holding close to the top of the ratchet here, and that's kind of as tight as I'll go right there. And then big, thicker bolt goes up top, which is the same thread, but there's a little bit of a thicker shoulder up here, and that one's gonna go up top. All right, so for this, you have to work at it a little bit, just kind of moving the rotor back and forth. I'm having a little bit of trouble right now, so I might actually get the jack and try to jack this thing up to get it to where I need to be, because it's kind of a pain in the butt, so. All right, guys, so I finally got those bolts in. I just need to tighten them down and put the rest of the bolts in, put the wheels on, and then I'm gonna show you guys what this looks like with a 2-inch lift all around. Now, obviously, I am not done with the suspension or anything like that. I'm getting new shocks, I'm getting new springs in next week, and I'm also getting new tires in within the next month or so. So then I'll have to figure out, you know, if I have to cut fenders or whatever. But this is just kind of the beginning, but I just wanted to show you guys how it's done. And I hope this helped you guys a little bit, and if it did, you already know what to do, and I'll see you in the next one.